This is the iPhone Air, and most people have been calling it a compromise. But after a week with it, I think it might be the opposite. The question is, did Apple finally give us what we actually need, or just trick us into wanting less? I switched from the iPhone 17 Pro expecting to miss it, but honestly, I didn't. At least, not in the ways I thought I would. The first thing that really hit me was how it feels in your hand. By now, I'm sure you've heard the Air is thin and light, but until you actually feel this thing and hold it, it's really hard to appreciate just how nice it is. I mean, this thing is mind-blowingly nice. The Air is roughly 20% lighter than the 17 Pro and 40% lighter than the Pro Max, which makes for a very noticeable difference, especially when it's in your pocket or you drop it onto your face while doom scrolling. Every time I pick up the Air, I'm still blown away with how it feels and equally surprised when I pick up my 17 Pro how chunky and almost outdated it feels. I'm someone that doesn't like overly large screens on phones, but somehow the Air's larger 6.5-inch display is easier to handle and navigate simply because of how thin it is. Aside from the slightly larger size, the display is identical to the 17 Pro. Same brightness, same color accuracy. The only difference is the dynamic island is a touch lower. The Air feels sturdy, premium, and in my opinion is just better looking than the 17 Pro. The polished titanium rails and the single color back give it a cleaner, more unified look, and I've always been a fan of the polished aesthetic, even if it's a fingerprint magnet. But speaking of fingerprints, let's be honest, most of us use a case, and the iPhone Air inside of a case is just not as special. It's still thin and light, but that whole feeling of how is this thing even real kind of begins to fade a bit. You might just want to skip the case entirely and opt for Apple Care on this one. But this is where I started asking myself, is this sleek design a feature for us, or is it just kind of a flex for Apple? The incredible thinness comes with a direct hardware trade-off though, the sound. To hit the super slim profile, Apple had to drop the dual speakers of the 17 Pro and go with a single mono speaker. It's something I definitely noticed at first, and if you crank the volume loud enough, you can hear a little more distortion in the audio, but for me personally, I don't consume much content directly on my phone, but even if you do, you're not really gonna notice a big change in sound quality as the speaker faces directly at you, but you may notice it when using speakerphone or on FaceTime in noisy environments. All in all, the iPhone Air clearly takes the cake in the looks category, but the thinness also leads to what many people are calling one of the Air's biggest compromises, the battery and performance. Basically, if the Air is the gimmick, the battery's where you'd expect to see the catch. Will the battery last as long as the 17 Pro? No, it won't. But for many users, that's the wrong question to ask. I used the iPhone 14 Pro before switching to the 17 series, and the Air actually outlasts what I'm used to, which surprised me. After a week of typical use, I've ended each day with no less than 50% charge. When recently using the 17 Pro, I charged it every night, and the Air is no different. I never really feel the need to top it up during the day and just plug it in at night. If you're coming from a Pro Max and tend to drain your battery daily, you might want to reconsider, but for most people, I think it has more than enough battery. While I have noticed the Air getting warmer than the 17 Pro from time to time, it's never really hindered performance in my daily use. The Air, well, he's a snappy little guy and handles everything like launching apps, multitasking, playing casual games, the same high level of performance as the 17 Pro. But if you're into more intensive gaming, the vapor cooling chamber and unibody aluminum design of the Pros might be a better bet. So if the battery and performance aren't really too much of a compromise for most people, what is? It's the camera. Not cameras plural, the camera. The Air has the same lens as the base 17 model, using Apple's Fusion lens to crop in to achieve 2x shots, meaning it has no true telephoto lens and lacks features like cinematic mode. The Air also lacks a 0.5 lens on the back. Shots from the Air in the standard 1x mode look every bit as good as the Pro, but there are some notable differences even at the 2x level, and even more so when zoomed in at levels above 2x. The Air also lacks the ability to shoot in pro-level formats like ProRes and ProRes RAW and transfers files at USB 2.0 speeds, meaning the Air has the same transfer speed as the 2005 iPod Nano. But honestly, when's the last time you used your USB cable to transfer files from your phone? The selfie camera, however, is the exact same as the 17 Pro, with the square sensor allowing for selfies taken in landscape while holding the phone vertically, and has a wider viewing angle. One thing though, if you're someone that uses the camera control button, at least for me with the wider body of the Air, it makes the location of the camera control a little awkward to reach, but as I mentioned in my 14 Pro versus 17 Pro video, it's not something I really ever use other than to maybe launch the camera quickly. So the camera system is where the trade-off is kind of undeniable, but here's the key. Look at your own camera roll. How often do you actually use the telephoto or the wide angle? Do you really shoot in cinematic mode often? Maybe, just maybe, Apple has been selling us on features we don't really need or use all that often, and what we really want is just a phone that's still premium but light and gets the job done well for tasks we use our phones for the most. Sure, there'll be times where you wish the speaker was louder or you could zoom in a little further, but 90% of the time, this phone is just a pleasure to use and hold, and I don't see the Air as a lesser iPhone. I see it as for people who value form and function in the right balance, which kind of opens the door for Apple to make the Pro phones actually for pros. Will I be keeping mine? Unfortunately, no. I can't justify keeping two flagship phones, and to be honest with you, it's too late to return my Pro. But if I had to choose one today, I would go with the Air hands down. It's the most enjoyable iPhone experience I've had in years. If you're still deciding, go to the Apple Store and hold them both. You might walk out thinking differently. Let me know which phone you got or which phone you're planning to get, and if you already bought the Air, let me know what you think. Anyways, thanks for watching, and if you want to hear more honest takes on tech, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you again real soon.